Emily has mentioned, and I'm sure you've all seen the news reports, and we ourselves use this $8 billion figure as a decent estimate of what the deficit will be if nothing is done. And I think that that's a reasonable amount. I think, having said that, though, that there are a lot of imponderables here. And whether it turns out to be exactly that or less or more, yes, we have a multi-billion-dollar problem. I don't want to sit up here and say, oh, well, it's all going to go away. It isn't. But it also, the exact amount is going to change based on various things ranging from court cases, like there's a case on whether the state could use tobacco money from the tobacco settlement for other purposes other than helping people stop smoking and health effects of tobacco. That's in the Ohio Supreme Court right now. Will the state, in fact, be able to use that money as it is for other purposes or not? Well, that's $250 million right there. There's the unemployment compensation issue that Emily mentioned, of whether we'll have to pay that interest. There's the question of how much revenue and when will we get revenue from the new casinos that are going to be built. There's the hospital fees, as she mentioned. There's the question of how much will we see continued use of the state services, of Medicaid, of more people going to community college because they see that as a better opportunity and because they're having trouble finding jobs, which then creates additional needs. So there are, I think, a number of things that will affect what the exact amount is, and so it isn't, you know, clearly going to be $8 billion, but it is nevertheless in that range. And so you wonder, what is going to be done? Well, I think all I can do is stand here and suggest some of the things that I've heard or read, and I think probably many of you have heard some of these things too, but maybe you haven't heard all of them. One thing I think, as Emily said, is that we are going to see very substantial cuts. And just yesterday, the new president of the Senate, he hasn't been elected yet, but I think is clearly going to be taking over, Tom Niehaus, agreed with the idea that the schools could look forward to 15% cuts. And you know, who knows if that's what will eventuate, but that's what's being talked about, seriously. There has been talk about trying to reduce Medicaid spending. It may require getting waivers from the federal government. I don't know how easy that might be in order to change eligibility. It's not something I would favor, but again, it's something that is being looked at in other states and that may be discussed here in Ohio. There have been reports also about whether the new governor will also want to go ahead with the VLTs. When that was proposed by Strickland, and it was thought that that would bring in, I think it was $933 million in revenue. I don't know how solid that estimate was, and of course now with the casinos, you would wonder whether it would bring in quite that much, but it is possible that that could be a revenue source. I think that there's likely to be a lot of discussion and some kind of debate, maybe not a resolution, but on the whole issue of pension funds. As many of you know, there had been proposals made by all of the major pension funds on what to do to make sure that they were solvent on a long-term basis. It seems quite clear at this point that those are not going to be acted upon, that the lame duck session will really not amount to a whole lot. And so that issue, like so many others, will in fact be left into the new General Assembly. And I think that they'll probably take a critical look at that. I think that we're hearing a lot about the issue of state government restructuring. There have been bills that were introduced in the last, or the current General Assembly, to merge many state agencies with the idea of generating savings. The sponsors of that have talked about saving $1 billion a year by making that. Whether that can really be accomplished, I think, is very uncertain, and it's also a question of how soon would you get the savings, even if you were able to actually get it. I think another thing that we're almost certain to see are some proposals to privatize state assets. Now, what will they be? Will they be more prisons? We have 2 state prisons that are privately operated right now here in Northeast Ohio. There have been bills already in the current General Assembly to call for privatizing half of the prisons. What would we get for them? I don't know exactly. We could sell off buildings, like the state of Arizona sold off many, or was selling off many of their state buildings. I think that was something that was got a good bit of, I think it was on the Daily Show and got some humorous reactions as well. But It could be that the lottery or the turnpike. I think the new governor had said earlier that he didn't intend to sell the turnpike, so that doesn't sound as likely. But you don't know. I think, as Emily said, everything really is on the table. I think that also, in something that is closest to you, local government is likely to take it on the chin. And there is, I think, what's going on right now is an attack on local government. There are people who are making speeches around the state who are saying that local government is bloated, that local government is inefficient, that local government, it's as if instead of buying milk by the gallon, I've heard several times, it's going to the convenience store and buying it a half pint at a time. This is something that was said at the City Club recently, was said in Columbus soon after the election. And so there's this idea that local government is something that needs to, and I don't think any of us here would disagree that we want to improve efficiency in local government. I'm not, trying to say that we aren't, but I think that that's something that's going to get serious consideration, and there already are proposals, as you may know, to slash the local government fund or to make it dependent upon efficiencies or steps that local governments take to win funding that currently comes to them without mandates or requirements. I wanted to speak very briefly about the local government fund a little more, and then also about the tangible personal property tax, since these are both issues that are important to you. And again, I want to say, I know many of you probably know more about this than I do, but for those of you who don't, I'll talk about it a little. The local government fund altogether, at least the amount that isn't given directly to municipalities that have income taxes, fell in 2009 by 14% at the state level. And it's been anticipated. There were estimates made, official estimates by the Department of Taxation. It's estimated to be $578 million this year, which is slightly down but almost flat from last year, and then a very small increase to $607 million next year. So it basically means that the local government fund, without any changes, will still remain 10% below what it was in 2008. So we can't expect that in the immediate future there's going to be some big increase in that, even without the kind of action that I've mentioned. What does that mean here in Cuyahoga County? Well, I'm sure many of you could tell me, but we had $106 million last year that was distributed by the county, and another $11.5 million to municipalities that levy an income tax. So you can see that this is a very important source of revenue, $48 million to the city of Cleveland alone, and I could go on with others, but I think that it's obviously a very important source of revenue. I think another question that's going to come up is the question of the casino revenue. And there is in the Constitution the constitutional amendment that was passed, a clause that says that the state can't just supplant the money and say that, well, because some of this is going to the local governments, well, we're not going to give you that amount. But the General Assembly can be very clever. And so I wouldn't discount that even if something is not done in a very clear way, maybe something can happen over a period of time. I think that revenue will be seen as additional local revenue at a time when everyone is looking for revenue. The tangible personal property tax